Ridge Racer!
It's a classic arcade-style racing game from Namco, developed for its famed System 22 arcade board. It spit its way onto the arcade scene in late 1993 in Japan and America and was an instant hit, featuring high-resolution polygonal graphics and a healthy dose of Namco nostalgia with its car names and designs. The techno and dance-inspired soundtrack, headed up by frequent Namco collaborator Shinji Hosoe, was a real highlight of Ridge Racer, giving it a high-energy vibe that was heightened further by some rather enthusiastic race commentary.
You must be one genius of a driver. You've gotta teach me!
Aside from its revolutionary graphics and sound, another feature that set this title apart from other similar racers at the time was its emphasis on drifting, something that is oh so common in racing games today but was fresh and exciting back in the mid-90s. While its simple gameplay, lack of multiplayer, and modest selection of tracks seem extremely limited today, the original Ridge Racer is one of the most influential racing games of all time, up there with its biggest rival at the time, Daytona USA from Sega. In 1995, a port of the game was a launch title for the original Sony PlayStation September 9th North American system release, as well as the September 22nd European launch. However, the year before, on December 3rd, 1994, Ridge Racer for PlayStation came out in Japan, becoming one of the 8 original titles that debuted with the PS1, leading the way in a console race that would see Sony beat all odds and cross the finish line in first place.
A new record!
The story is widely known at this point. PlayStation would conquer the next console generation and further propel gaming into the mainstream, with the Sony brand perhaps becoming more associated today with video games than music and movie players, film productions, and high-quality televisions. Looking back at when it all started with the SCPH-1000 model of the system, and Nintendo's seemingly unshakable grip on a majority of the world's console market at the time, it would be hard to predict or imagine just how dominating the PlayStation IP would become. Ridge Racer was a major launch title that was largely responsible for much of the system's early success, and the series would have a strong association with Sony consoles and handhelds for years to come.
It's Ridge Racer! Ridge Racer! Remember that one?
This port of Namco's hit Racer has its flaws, but was one of the best arcade conversions at the time, adding in new content and becoming a flagship title that showed off what the PlayStation, and the new generation of console video gaming, could accomplish early on. This game is so beloved that in 1998 a high-spec version of the game would be included with Ridge Racer Type 4, improving the 94 port's performance and graphics. But what about the 7 other launch titles? Well, you might be surprised at just how quaint and humble the original system's offerings were in retrospect. Let's take a look at them now, shall we? Gokujo Parodius da Deluxe Pack is a collection of 2 classic cute and colorful Konami arcade shooters, Parodius da from 1990 and Gokujo Parodius Kako no Eiko Motomete from 94. Both games are a part of Konami's Gradius parody series that features silly and fun homages to the company's past. However, the whimsical presentation doesn't mean these games lack a challenge, as even Gradius and Salamander veterans may work up a sweat dodging bullets and foes in landscapes that resemble a Japanese man's bad sushi-induced fever dream. Each game controls just like Gradius and features that game's power-up system, with the bell system from Twinbee thrown in to complicate things further and add to the chaos. Parodius style lets players choose between a super deformed Vic Viper, an octopus, a Twinbee ship, and Pentaro the penguin, and the game overall feels like a slapstick repaint of Gradius. The thing this game is probably most well known for is its giant Vegas showgirl boss and her seductive legs, swinging hips, and sultry moans. Gokujo Parodius features these characters plus a few more, including the bunny girl Hikaru, who is almost a mascot for this series, and things play pretty much the same, but with a slightly more impressive scope. These are pretty straightforward arcade shoot-em-ups, however Konami included enough options, cheat codes, and secrets to keep one busy for a while. This deluxe pack sold well enough to be reprinted as a Best Hits PS1 release, more than once actually, and was also published on the Saturn in May of 1995. Additionally, both console versions got released in Europe simply as Parodius. No matter which version you pick up, you're in for a great time, especially if you have a friend to play with, and as long as you're both fans of shooting games.
299. 299. 299.
A4 Evolution is a train and city planning simulation from ArtDink, an updated version of the fourth entry in its popular 8 列車で行こう series, or Let's Take the A Train. If you've ever played SimCity, you'll immediately understand the concept. However, this game goes a lot deeper with more options and urban and financial management scenarios to consider, something flipping through the extra thick manual is a major indicator of. It's the kind of game you can get lost in for hours, and one that has no real goal other than to create a large, efficient metropolitan empire and claim all the rewards from doing so. Money, power, respect, hoes. In a simulated 32-bit setting. One of the cool things you can do in this game is travel through your city from the perspective of a train or bus route, allowing you to really feel immersed in the game world. A4 Evolution features mouse support, but plays just fine with a standard PS1 controller and requires a whopping 15 blocks of memory to save. Yes, an entire standard memory card. While the Let's Take the A Train series is pretty niche, often remaining in Asia, the follow-up to this title, A4 Evolution Global, did get released internationally. It's a solid urban planning simulator, and for the people who like these kinds of games, this is the kind of game they like. And the fact that the series still continues on decades later is all the proof you need. Nekketsu Oyako is a 2D beat-em-up from Technosoft, similar to classics like Streets of Rage or Final Fight. Two players can choose between 3 characters to kick, punch, and beat to a pulp countless street toughs on a journey that lasts about 1 hour, pretty standard for this style of game. Nekketsu Oyako can translate to something like hot-blooded family, which is fitting since the heroes of this game are family members on a quest to save the family matriarch from a devious criminal organization called Big Black Full Stop. It's a pretty standard beat-em-up regarding controls and game progression, but a couple of things help set it apart from other similar games. One is that at times the amount of enemies that appear on screen can be pretty impressive, although Nekketsu Oyako does have a problem with slowdown. The other is that the game has a fun and even bizarre sense of humor. Some of the more well-known examples of this include the younger characters being unable to pick up beer health power-ups due to their age, and the second stage taking place entirely inside and on top of an extremely large whale. Nekketsu Oyako isn't a pillar of the beat-em-up genre or anything like that, but it is a really good time that doesn't take itself too seriously and provides a solid and quality gaming experience, especially for 2 players. Although it can be a bit on the easy side, even on harder difficulties if you spam special attacks. It's hard not to do. Like Parodius mentioned earlier, it would also find its way to the Sega Saturn, not as a launch title, but in the following year with some tweaks and improvements. Anyway, if you still want to know a little bit more about this PS1 release, I did a full video of it back in 2014. So, that's there. TAMA, Adventurous Ball and Giddy Labyrinth is a puzzle game from Time Warner Interactive, and as its full title suggests, it's basically a digital version of the popular wooden Labyrinth maze games, where you tilt a playfield to guide a steel ball or marble to a goal. In this game, you guide a blue ball called TAMA, Japanese for ball, who has been rendered immobile by an evil curse. Yes, it's a Labyrinth game with a story. Your role is to shift the world around for him to reach a goalpost before time runs out, and with the ultimate goal for him to save his world from ruin. In addition to tilting the field up, down, left, and right, you can rotate it as well as zoom in for more precise movements. Just like the game it's based on, there are numerous pitfall hazards that must be avoided, and while things start out simple at first, hazards become increasingly complex and difficult to manage, including pitfalls that move, springs, sliding platforms, and even guillotines. Requiescat in pace, our round friend. Though TAMA's concept is simple, the game itself is actually quite challenging, and it will take a bit of practice and dedication to progress through the game, at least on the normal and hard difficulties. The timer decreases at a slow rate, but the time limits are strict, and spending too much time on any one playfield will probably result in the loss of a credit somewhere down the line, as completion of a map only increases the next stage's timer slightly. Controls are also a bit sluggish, requiring careful planning before making drastic movements. TAMA remained a Japan exclusive, however, like other titles covered here, it was not a PlayStation exclusive. It was also published on the Sega Saturn, a launch title for it too, no less. TAMA is a decent puzzle title that is easy to pick up and play, and while it isn't going to wow anyone today, it's still good fun. Mahjong Station MAZIN is one of many games on the PlayStation based on the traditional Chinese table game that is so popular throughout Asia. Developed by Chat Noir and published by Sunsoft, MAZIN sets itself apart from other Mahjong titles, namely in one big way, which you've probably already noticed, and that is with its flashy polygonal 3D graphics. The game's visuals were extremely impressive in 1994, and it's not just the character models that impress, as the swooping and dramatic camera angles and sound design also make the relatively relaxed and reserved Mahjong experience into one that really gets the blood pumping. The god of Mahjong, the titular Majin, has gathered Mahjong warriors from different times and places to participate in an interdimensional tournament, with the winner facing him at the end. The player is a young Japanese man from 1928 Tokyo, who will face a colorful cast of opponents such as an ancient Greek soldier, a French queen from the Age of Discovery, a Romanian vampire, and a Japanese disco girl born in Hawaii in the 1970s because of course. Somehow I don't think the story is meant to be taken seriously or make sense. Players can choose between playing through this story in campaign mode, where they can also save their progress on the way to challenge the god of Mahjong, but also have the option to just play the game in free battle mode. While the 3D graphics are Majin's main selling point, dubbed virtual mode, those who just want to get in a good old-fashioned game of Mahjong can play in standard mode, which is a faster moving 2D style that digital Mahjong fans would most likely already be familiar with. Compared to other launch titles, Majin is not the deepest, most feature-filled experience, but it was an important launch title with visuals that wowed gamers back in 1994. Mahjong Goku Tenjiku is another Mahjong game from Chat Noir, this one released by mega third-party publisher Electronic Arts. Yep, technically EA's first PlayStation game is a Mahjong title. Like TAMA, this was also a Sega Saturn launch title, and in fact Mahjong Goku Tenjiku was released on a variety of other systems such as the Super Famicom, 3DO, and PCFX. It's an entry in a series of Mahjong titles developed by Chat Noir based on the Chinese epic The Journey to the West. Players can choose one of 4 heroes from the story who defeat their foes through Mahjong games as they progress on their adventure. And similar to Majin, there's also a free play mode for those who just want to enjoy pure digital Mahjong. But unlike that title, there are no fancy graphics that show the power of the PlayStation, and the presentation is simple and subdued for the most part. If it wasn't already painfully obvious from my footage, I don't know how to play Mahjong, so I can't really assess Mahjong Goku Tenjiku as a Mahjong title, but given how popular this game and series is, and how many titles in this genre Chat Noir has under its belt, I can assume it's as fantastic as the tale it's based on. Okay, maybe not that fantastic, but it's probably solid Mahjong. Crime Crackers is called an RPG, which would make it the system's first, however it's not really an RPG in the traditional sense. It's more of a sci-fi first-person shooter mixed in with adventure and exploration elements, which includes inventory management. Since there are no classic experience or leveling up systems here, it's a bit of a stretch to call it an RPG. but what it can be called is the most ambitious, and in my opinion, the most interesting, of the PlayStation's launch titles. Crime Crackers was published by Sony Computer Entertainment, the first it published on the system, and was developed by Mediavision, a name that PlayStation diehards should know as the team who would go on to make the Gunstar Heroes-inspired Gunner's Heaven, aka Rapid Reload, and the highly successful Wild Arms series of role-playing games. You know, real RPGs. Crime Crackers follows the adventures of a group of bounty hunters who travel the vast galactic ocean in the pursuit of dastardly space pirates. As mentioned earlier, gameplay is handled from a first-person perspective, and there are 3 playable characters that can be cycled through at any given time, each with different playstyles. The game is broken up into missions, most of which culminate in a boss fight that takes place in a rather tight arena. To get to the boss, the team will typically have to navigate a series of corridors and rooms, battling a slew of lesser enemies along the way. Oftentimes some light puzzle solving or key fetching is also required. Various items can be found during missions, as well as purchased at shops in between missions, and these include restoratives, ammo, health and bullet upgrades, as well as weapons and armor. The RPG element of the game mostly revolves around item management and upgrades, however there is also a team rank system that determines which items can be equipped. If looked at through a modern lens, I'm sure many would label Crime Crackers as dated. With its somewhat clunky and limited controls, simple graphics and story presentation, repetitious gameplay and background music. However, I think it's still a wonderful game with a lot of character and charm, and a rewarding experience for those who stick with it, and understand it may not have the quality of life features that games have today. Although you can save at any point, which is impressive for an early PlayStation title. Anyway, many of the issues that plagued this game would be resolved in its 1997 sequel, Crime Crackers 2, but instead of going straight to that game, I would still recommend people take a crack at the original. And those were the 8 games that launched the PlayStation onto the gaming scene over 3 decades ago, back on December 3rd, 1994. By 1998, I'd say the PlayStation identity was pretty firmly established with massively popular titles like Metal Gear Solid and Final Fantasy VII, but the niche offerings were still very much an integral part of its library. Man, I miss those days. Anyway, happy birthday PlayStation, and thanks for the many great memories. And thank you for watching Import Gaming for the win and celebrating the launch of this groundbreaking system that made such an impact on so many lives. I hope you'll share your personal stories of the early days of the PS1 with me. This is Jimmy Hoppa, take care and play PlayStation.